Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rosco Live on Clubhouse. I want to thank you for joining us today. This is a space we've created for fun, educational conversations with lighting and scenic designers in the live entertainment industry. We're going to open up the stage for you to engage in the conversation later on, and you'll have a chance to ask questions to our guests today. We are recording as well, so keep that in mind. Hosting today's conversation is Chad Tiller. He's the VP of Live Entertainment Market at Rosco. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Chad, to introduce our guest and get the conversation started.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Introducing this as fun and educational conversations. We will try to be both. I hope that's high pressure.
I have no doubt.
I think it's going to be great. Hey, give me 1 second. I realize I'm not on Wi-Fi, and I want to make sure to have a better connection. So let me just connect to that. There we go. So we created the Educational Design Club here on Clubhouse because we felt that there wasn't a ton of design-centered conversation in the Clubhouse app. And so for those of you who are listening, or for those who are listening to the recording and listening to it later, find us and find the Entertainment Design Club. Give us a follow. We'll make you a member. And once you're a member, feel free to create your own rooms to discuss design concepts in here. Today's room is specifically Rosco Live. This is a series, as Nikki said, fun and educational conversations, and we hope that they are. We are recording these, and they live in perpetuity online at Nikki's going to give us the email address, or I'm sorry, the web address. It's rosco.com/Rosco Live. Is that right? Is it that easy?
Even easier, rosco.com/live.
/live. Okay, great. Rosco.com/live. You visit that website, you'll be able to find the previous recordings of conversations we've had. And when we complete today's conversation, it'll be populated there, I think in about a week or so. I also, if you have any comments or concerns or questions, or you want to collaborate with us, you want to help us make this series better, if you don't know how to get a hold of anybody at Rosco, you can merely send it to live@rosco.com, an email address created just for this channel, and we're happy to get any feedback or comments through that email address. Today, we're going to be speaking with Jeanette Yew. Jeanette is an award-winning designer for theater, opera, dance, musicals, music performances, installation, and immersive experiences. She is both a puppet artist and a designer of lighting and video, and she aims to create a visual environment that is organically integrated into the landscape and language of the production. Her work has been seen across New York, across the U.S., and around the world. By last count, I think she's been on 4 continents. So if anybody's listening from South America that wants to produce, I think Jeanette is still hoping to get to South America. Her toy theater production of The Butchermen was invited to be presented at the 2006 Prague Quadrennial. Her lighting design of K-pop with Ars Nova in association with the Ma Yi Theater Company and the Woodshed Collective was awarded the Henry Hughes Lighting Design Award. Was also awarded the 2017 Lit Design Award in Performance, and was nominated for both the Lortel and the Drama Desk Awards. In addition to lighting, she's a projection designer with extensive experience designing for new works and original adaptations. Furthermore, she is a generative artist, devising interdisciplinary productions through contemporary puppetry aesthetics and technique. New York Times described her recent project with Target Margin, the 4th act of The Iceman Cometh, as consistently inventive. Her critically hailed immersive production, Are They Edible?, premiered at La Mama to sold-out houses, and a shadow puppet opera, And Here We Are, with composer Matthew Welch, premiered at National Sawdust in 2018. Using these mediums and a strong background in devising interdisciplinary and collaborative productions, Jeanette creates innovative and interactive contemporary puppetry performances. When she's not busy with all of this work, you can find her at NYU, where she is an assistant arts professor and head of the lighting design with the Department of Drama, Production, and Design Studio. We're not done yet, folks. She's also a member of the Woodshed Collective and Kaborka. She's a USA 829 member. She's a recipient of the NEA TCG Career Development Program. You can find out all of this information and more at JeanetteYew.com or watch some of her content at Vimeo.com/Jeanette Yew. Jeanette, that was a mouthful. I'm amazed with all of this work that you do, that you have time for us, and we're grateful that you're spending some time with us. Hello, how are you today?
I am doing great. I'm outdoor at Brookfield Place.
Right, you're down at Brookfield Place because right now you're opening up A Dozen Dreams. This is a production with On Guard Arts that is running literally today, folks. It opens today. She's taking time away from opening day, and it runs through May 30th at Brookfield Place. I will give the quick plug, onguardarts.com. That's On Guard like the fencing, ENGARDEARTS.org. You can find out all about A Dozen Dreams, but the tagline is so intriguing. A dozen playwrights, a dozen rooms, a dozen dreams.
And that's exactly what you get.
Tell me a little bit about what people can experience when they come down there.
Well, it is a guided audio tour with visual elements. So like I said, we do not lie in our advertisement. Each room is written by one playwright. So we have 12 different playwrights, ranging from Ellen McLaughlin to Emily Mann to Sam Chase to, I'm just like going through my head thinking about the people's names, Erica Dickinson. Just a huge amount of like talent that they all, in the beginning of the pandemic, Annie Hamburger, which is the artistic director of On Guard Arts, commissioned basically these 12 playwrights and asked them to basically write about what they were dreaming during this time of the pandemic. And it was originally conceived to be sort of, it was like 12 computer on headsets. And then eventually we sort of like, well, but then we should have some visual. And then eventually, Brookfield signed on board and give us a space. And so then we now have 12 rooms. And what you experience is when you come in, you'll be given a set of headsets and a phone where there is an audio track that we run for you, so you don't have to do anything. And then you will be guided through a journey through these 12 rooms and listen and in some cases watch the playwrights performing their work.
Wow. So what challenges were presented? I mean, you're producing this at the tail end of a global pandemic. What challenges did you run into doing that?
Well, I think the first beginning of the challenges was like how to design a live experience safely. So we went through some iteration of like maybe only one person in the room at a time, which now it is like 2 person in the room. So you can come with a friend, or if you don't have a friend, we'll pair you up with another person that will become your friend. Originally, there was an idea where we need to space the room so that one person go in and then come out, and then the room will be empty for X amount of time, which now that seems to be not, we no longer need to worry about that. So it's just interesting that everything is always an unknown is the biggest challenge in producing it this way. And also like will people feel comfortable to go to something like this? Which of course now I think we are, because of the vaccine and the warmer weather and so on and so forth. So that was just like a lot of uncertainty to start out with.
Well, and for maybe those who aren't here in New York, Brookfield Place, the venue, it's a shopping mall, right?
Yes, it is. It is a giant shopping mall. I like to say to people that we are between Ferragamo and Tory Burch. So that's where you can find us.
Oh, so you're slumming.
Yes, we're slumming. We're slumming, Tory Burch is not as good as Gucci, which is just one store over. I kind of wish that, we're between Gucci and Ferragamo. But, That's just, my preference.
So that alone must have presented its own unique challenges, presenting an immersive experience that's in the middle of a shopping mall. Let's talk about just the load-in alone. Talk about what challenges came around with this.
Well, first of all, we were not allowed to. That also gone through some negotiation and some sort of confusion. Originally, we were able to have, we can build solid walls up to 8 feet, and then anything from there to the actual ceiling, which is about 12 feet, will have to be a mesh material for airflow. But then, so we proceeded this, and then we were allowed to sort of drop a lightweight grid. Can be very heavy, but lightweight grid. But then, 2 months into it, we were notified by Brookfield that no, actually the walls can only go up to 8 feet, the end. And that hanging off of a grid is not possible because of sprinkler concern. So that means that we have to drastically redesign it to so for lighting, as you would imagine, I become very limited in position.
Sure.
And then anything over 8 feet has to be approved by them. So if I want to put a light on top of a wall, I have to basically get their approval. And any walls or any furniture item like cabinets, bookshelf, anything that is theirs, we cannot do anything to it. So we could not attach to their wall. We cannot paint their wall. So there's just a lot of those kind of limitation. And I was just being told by our TD the other day that they actually went through and catalog every single dent and scuff in the walls before we move in. This used to be a Burberry store. And so they basically catalog every single nicks and dings and imperfection in the wall, and basically tell us that to repaint a wall, because it have to be with union painter from Brookfield, will be about $9,000. So that was one of those okay, So the first bit of low-in is actually all done by Brookfield. It's themselves, because when we first bring everything in, it has to be that way. But then after that, we were able to basically, because the store is pretty self-contained, and so we were basically then able to just do our work inside the store itself. And they also gave us another store that is empty right now to be sort of our overflow. And also just to be say that the Brookfield place itself, the mall itself, is the location, but we are hosted and invited by Brookfield Arts, which has been tremendously amazing. They have been super supportive. They help us to walk through all the details regarding being interfacing with the mall. And in fact, Brookfield Arts has been doing really well because they have so many different locations, they were telling me. So they were actually surprised at how much events they can continue to host. I think they started hosting events as early as last August, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. So they have been tremendous.
Well, if you listeners want to go to this immersive experience, currently running today through May 30th, visit onguardarts.org to learn more. Jeanette, instead of talking about the immediate future, I want to go back to the beginning. Tell me a little bit about how you got started in entertainment, in design, and where did your career sort of begin?
Oh, I have a very, very convoluted journey to get here. So I actually have to go back to the fact that I was born in Detroit, but I grew up in Hong Kong. So I do not grow up in this country, even though I am a natural born citizen with this country. When I was in Hong Kong, when I was a kid in Hong Kong, because my grandparents are both actors and film directors in Hong Kong and Taiwan. My mother sort of grew up in an artistic family, even though she herself chose to become a lawyer. She always bring us to go see foreign. We see a lot of film, a lot of foreign film. We go to arts event, and we are also the season ticket holder for the only repertory theater in Hong Kong. And I saw Waiting for Godot when I was 12, which have no idea what it was about at all. Yes, and it was in Cantonese also, which was also fascinating. Like they translated the work, so it was in Chinese and in Cantonese dialect. But I just remember there was a moment where everyone is holding their breath together. And I just remember that experience like really vividly. And then fast forward, 10 years later, I actually did my undergrad at University of Washington. My degree was actually in business administration accounting. I did not pursue theater because there's always an assumption that that's just something that, you enjoy and you go to, but you don't really do it. So I worked with a Fortune 500 company for a couple years, got a little bored, and then I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to volunteer in theater. Like many people who volunteer in theater, you start out with being like an usher in front of house, and then one day somebody said that, well, you look like you can be a stage manager, and then you do a stage man show and go like, no, I really am not a stage manager. What was I thinking? And there I just sort of tried different things and eventually landed on lighting design because I like the fact that with lighting, you only have a few tools. So it's always about how do you creatively use the tools. It's about the reconfiguration of them versus having new stuff, like unlike set design, which is about building new things. So I got really interested in that and then eventually thought, okay, people who graduated with an undergraduate degree in theater must have special knowledge that I know nothing about. So I then decided to go back to grad school, except that I miscalculated and I went to Cal Arts, which teach me none of the things that I thought I would know, like, fire pockets and egress and those kind of things that I thought people all know. But it was a great education. I went there for Chris Acklin. He was my mentor. And then I got a Hemsley lighting internship, which is also amazing, very fortunate, and put me in New York City. And then I just sort of one person lead to the next person and lead to the next person. So I feel very fortunate how I sort of begin and now being here. That's my life.
Wow. Well, I'm amazed. I've known you as long as I have, and I've only known a very small fraction of that information. It's so many things pop into my head, did you have a passion for accounting?
Oh, that's funny. I actually am a really good accountant. If I have access to all your paper, I can rebuild your financial life for you. I actually study a thing called cost accounting, which actually very similar to making theater actually. So I don't do taxation. That's not what I study. Public accounting is not what I do. I do what I think called cost accounting, which is basically if you imagine like a glass that is in your kitchen cabinet, we have to figure out what is the material and the labor costs and the overhead that goes into making that glass. We break up the company into what we call cost center. And then we basically figure out for each cost center how much it costs, and then we divided it back up and therefore be able to know how much we're supposed to price that glass. So, and we call that rolling it up. So you roll it up from raw material all the way to your finished goods so that you know exactly how much you should be, how much it costs, so therefore you know how much you can price the product. And incidentally, if you're talking about I'm going to back up. The reason that it feels very much like theater is because I actually go to the actual factory floor and I need to get to know intimately every part of the process and the people who are involved in it. And really understand how something is being made and how decisions are being made. And so I feel like that way is really similar to theater is because, yes, I'm a designer. I have ideas about things, but I have to constantly be working with a whole group of people to bring it from this seed idea and, rolling it up into the finished goods, which is the show. So I feel like that experience of being able to go into any room and talk to sort of anyone, because I can be talking to a integrated circuit engineer, to someone who is like literally his job is to smash this object over and over again to see how good it can hold up in the field. And so being able to actually understand how all these things fit together, I feel like that was actually really good training, and it feels very much like theater. And I sometimes tell students this story, and I said that we all get stressed out about, our work, obviously. But I said that my major thing that is the most stressed out thing I've ever heard was when I was working at that company. We have to do a raw material inventory, which means that I have to stop the entire production line because nothing can get checked out, because otherwise the inventory can't be accurate while there are 4 hours. And it's my job to write computer program to access the database to then be able to pull out the details as to which things they're supposed to go count and get in, and figure out what the difference. And so the night before, while I'm like writing this program and staging this job, my boss came down and she just casually sat down next to me and she was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I said, "Well, seems fine. I'm like doing this thing and, we're going to spit out the data soon and so on and so forth." And she said, "Oh, cool. I just want to let you know that because you're holding the entire production line, which means that you're holding about $25 million worth of shipment. So if you screw up, I just want to let you know that the CEO himself is going to fire you. Otherwise, keep going."
No pressure.
Yeah, just going to be fine. And that was like my first time ever doing that at the age of like 23. And I was like, cool. I don't know what else I'm supposed to be doing, but I guess I just need to make sure this is accurate. So that
precision and collaboration and knowing how the sausage is made are all valuable lessons, I suppose. So
yes,
and certainly translatable to the business of making theater. That would also, I would guess, influence your ability to start building puppets. Is that something you've done since a young age, or how did you get into puppetry?
When I was in University of Washington, I did take some theater classes out of curiosity. The problem with University of Washington is that because if you have to cross school, you have to get 2 whole major. You can't have a minor. So when I was at University of Washington, I actually did take some theater classes whenever I can. And I, at that point in time, there was actually still a puppetry teacher there. I don't think they keep that puppetry program at University of Washington anymore. And her name was Miss Aurora Valentini. And because the University of Washington, at the time, the theater degree also allowed you to be able to teach theater. So there's an educational component. And puppetry in this country often linked with education. And so she offered it to all the theater students. They have to take sort of that intro. I think they have like 2 different choices related. One is either child drama or like introduction to puppetry or something like that. So I took that course with her and kind of got really interested in making it, doing some work with it. And when I was in Washington State, after my time as an accountant, I also freelance and I would be teaching, and puppetry is the thing that I teach to all the grade K through 12. Then I went to Cal Arts, and it turns out Cal Arts, Janie Geiser, experimental animator, also puppeteer, has a program there. So I kind of able to continue, and that was what introduced me to the contemporary practices of puppetry. And so that's kind of how it all begins.
Are there any lessons from puppetry that have influenced your video or projection or lighting design, or vice versa?
Absolutely. I think there's like a couple of things. One, I think, is that puppeteers are control freaks. So we usually write and design and build and perform our own show. So it allows me to become very holistic. because then I'm able to serve all these different roles. Now I don't do it for my own show. Now I don't perform in it, and I usually just direct, and I would usually have other people design. But because that process is so integrated, so that's one of the things. The other thing is that it allows me to think of scale very differently. So I call myself, as a designer, I call myself a visual dramaturg. So like one of the prime example of how these things interact was a show called Ludic Proxy, written by Aya Ogawa and directed by her, and who is also my long time collaborator for many years. And in one of the section of Ludic Proxy, there was an idea of a video game, and so we were thinking about how to do it. So do we project? We at the time we were also deciding to be in the round. So then there's a whole conversation about, do you project it on the wall and make it really big and build a lot of like animation and interactivity thing, like, or seemingly interactive things, so that people are like inside the game environment and so on and so forth. And I was thinking about this, and I eventually say to Aya that I said that, look, the video game is actually a really intimate experience. You play in front of a screen that is not a giant scale. I mean, now people can, but back then people don't. And I actually said that, you know what? I think that we should shrink it. Instead of going big, we should shrink it. And what we ending up did was like we built a miniature of that game environment and used miniature cameras to go into this game environment, and then projected it back onto the wall, but projected it almost like sort of like your home TV monitor scale, like size. And I thought that was really much more successful than trying to plaster the entire theater with projection. So I think that as a puppeteer, I just often, and I think that I do that a lot, I often just really think about scale very creatively.
Wow, and there's lessons there about the frugality of design, and there are always a heavy-handed approach and a less heavy-handed approach, and it's interesting that for that, which could have been this large, heavily technical, I mean, it still sounds fairly technical, but a heavy, over-the-top production concept, taking a more soft-handed approach was more successful.
Yeah, I think so. I like that scene, so I don't care what other people think. I'm just
and so following. I'm going back to your timeline here. Following, you're teaching K through 12. You're teaching puppetry. You've gone to Cal Arts. You've continued studying the multi-hyphenate disciplines that you had studied. And when did you start teaching as a professor?
Oh, I was also like, I feel quite fortunate, very lucky, that a classmate of mine, a friend, Sean Fillion, was also leaving an adjunct teaching position with Stony Brook just as I was coming in just as I was finishing up the Hemsey lighting internship. So he sort of said that, hey, do you want to teach? And I said, sure. I just finished up the internship, the New York City Ballet and the New York City Opera hiring me back for one more season to do something, or some shows, I don't remember exactly. So I wasn't like super busy, and so I thought, okay, I would like go teach at Stony Brook University, and ending up that's where and then eventually I go from an adjunct to become a lecturer, and then I was there for like about 7 years. And I really like teaching. Because I actually think that teaching and doing theater go really hand in hand for me, because they are both an investigation of process. And then the only difference is like with teaching, there's no opening night. There's nothing, like you're constantly working on both the process of your students, like the student themselves is a process, and your relationship with them is a process that grow over time or change or morph, or sometimes discontinue. And then I find myself also then asking myself, like, why do I believe in these things? and so it's another process of investigation. And so I find that really exciting. And now there's a boat coming by. I don't know if you guys can hear it.
The sound effects are provided by New York City Harbor. We appreciate you, New York City Harbor, for all that you do for us every day. This is the joy of presenting this conversation live, is that we sometimes get interruptions. At any moment, my dog might bark in the background, and that's just the realities of it. Jeanette, I will circle back. Earlier, when you were talking about your trajectory, you admitted that you thought theater is just sort of something you enjoy, but it's not something you do for a living. I'm wondering, now that you are a professor, and you talked about Stony Brook, but we also know that you're now at NYU teaching the undergraduate lighting programs. My question is, how do you communicate that to your students, that theater can be a living? This is something that it's more than just something you can enjoy as a hobby. This is something you can do for a living.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I'm the proof, right? And all the friends of mine, and like you and other people, maybe perhaps on this, listening on this, or either now or later, obviously, definitely. And I think the thing that I want to be very clear to the student is that it actually takes many different forms. And I think that is actually one of the things that I observe undergraduate students don't always realize. And so part of my job is actually introducing them to the field, and not just about introducing them to specifically being a lighting designer. I mean, it's great that if they ending up become a lighting designer, but I also think that this field is actually really, really fast. And I think that, the unfortunate employment scenario presented by the pandemic also simultaneously illustrated to the world that this field is really wide. It has millions of people working in it in many different capacity. Your career don't all have to look like I don't know why this is not any judgment, but your career doesn't have to look like Don Holder, as even if you do lighting design, or or your set design career don't have to look like David Zinn. There's just so many different variety. It's the kind of things that I want to encourage my student to think about, and not be locking into, I should only be designing on Broadway, as the only alternative to the way of being having a career in this field. That's the thing that I really I really emphasize in my teaching.
Oh, sure. I echo that 100%. And I would say, if anybody could draw a straight line from where they started to where their career takes them by the age of 40 or 50, then congratulations to you. But I think the vast majority of us, it's a crooked, jagged line with many turns and twists, rises and falls. And and success is not dictated just on, well, I have these Broadway credits. That is absolutely success in its own right, but there are many other facets to that. You talked about the pandemic and what it illustrated. Talk to me about teaching this visible, tangible medium of lighting to students when you are not in the same room together. How did remote instruction impact your educational efforts?
Well, in a couple of different ways. One is there's something just that you just can never teach. For example, NYU is actually doing what we call a spring extension, because the fall, a certain aspect of the fall semester curriculum load is a little lighter, because we couldn't do any hands-on stuff. So I'm teaching color theory. In color theory, it's just impossible to teach in the remote setting. That just is. However, I feel like what I have then lost in that sense, gained by having much more in-depth conversation about process, how do you come up with the design, and about communication, because I think there's so much. I said one of the things I say to my student all the time is that as lighting designer, we seemingly do nothing 90% of the time. And then we have 10% of the time to do it all, because we just have to wait for everything to be there to do it. And so what do you do in that 90% of the time? Which is actually all about communication, watching, listening, learning, figuring out like the vocabulary with everyone so that you can be all on the same page. Because by the time you get to that 10% and you're not in the same vocabulary, then it's going to be really hard and arduous journey. And how do you like look at like what does lighting designer do for research, for example? I know every single school teaches you to do research, but like what the hell, lighting designer, like everything that I'm present on research is always going to be 2D pigment based, when in fact light is never pigment based. And so I find those things that sometimes I run out of time now actually afforded me time to do that. And also another thing that was really good was because it was on Zoom, it's very easy for me to invite guests. Much easier, because like people don't have to think about traveling all the way to NYU and whether they can make it that day and so on and so forth. So I was able to expand to invite directors and other designers and other collaborators in the room. And they're all being very generous with their time, and the student get to learn a lot in that other vein. So I focus a lot on like collaboration and communication, and then on their own process, and then good old fashioned play analysis. So it was actually I just shifted some of these things.
Wow, I benefited from this. As you know, I was a guest for one of your classes, and you got to bring me in. I think it's always so interesting when we talk about the vastness of the industry. There's an entire field in product development, manufacturing, sales, and management of products. There's a whole extension to the lighting field. So for anybody listening, or those who are listening to the recording, the lighting industry is not as narrow as the handful of designers who are working on Broadway. There's many more places to be involved in this world, to be involved in this industry, and to be active in it. And Jeanette, I thank you for allowing me to come into your class over the past couple of months and experience that. Another thing that Jeanette, that you did was NYU was able to get their hands on a collection of Rosco mix books. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how you use that in remote instruction as a tool to help teach the students.
Yeah, that was actually really super helpful. I think that because I use it we have a class called Fundamental of Stagecraft, which in the normal world, what they would do would be they would be like in a light lab, and we would be demonstrating how to hang lights, demonstrating how to focus a light, demonstrating like this is LECO, this is source 4, this is a source 4, this is the difference between like what is a LECO and then source 4 and then a PAR and so on and so forth. And we always have a little bit of because the students do come in saying what areas that they want to focus on. And the purpose of the class is to introduce them to all the different discipline and what kind of craft is involved. And that class, when we do that, I have actually find that often you will have like the stage manager student sort of going like, oh, I don't sure I can learn how to hang a light, but I don't know when I will ever use it. Or a costume designer student sort of thinking similarly, right? So the mix book was really interesting because we shift into remote, and I was using the mix book as a way for them to do a project. They can use color for storytelling, lighting the same scene, but now with color. And the thing that was interesting, which is I think you touch on when you come in, is that the mix book is a great like communication tool. And even though yes, they did the project, but because the mix book can also retain, you can save color. And so when we were talking about research, it becomes really interesting that they can share research by share a color that they have in mind, by just like matching it to the picture that they took, right? And so they can send it to the other students in the group. And so all of a sudden, other students, like particularly I think like costume and set design students particularly, started realizing that, oh, this is actually a great communication tool. And then I see like a little bit of a difference, because now students kind of also understanding what lighting is doing for their own discipline. And and like a stage manager can do a similar thing, right? If they have one of these in the rehearsal room, and if a director look at something and go like, oh, I want it to be that color, you can actually start to represent that in some way. And I think that was ending up how we were using it the most, is like about communication tool, in addition of them using it to do storytelling, which of course that was somewhat successful in a way where, because it is on Zoom, so a lot of the students sort of explained to me and like say that my picture didn't come out the way that it was in the room. It really was green, but it's actually the picture makes it look very blue or something like that. But that's just a limitation of like camera and Zoom. And so I'm actually going to use the mixed book again for color theory to basically talk about the different types of LED unit and how to like discover the different ways that like LED would emit color in a way. So I'm going to actually use it again for that reason.
Well, I love everything you're saying, so I don't have to sit here and dwell on it. I've always said the mix book is much more than a really cool flashlight. So I'm grateful that you're finding all these interesting uses for it.
And yes, it is a really cool flashlight. And the two of the students like already keep asking us, can they keep it? Which we said
that's
no.
That's up to you. I'm not here to make those decisions for you. Hey, I'm going to toss it back over to Nikki to reset the room, and we'll see if we can't get into a little Q&A.
Well, thanks, Chad and Jeanette. This has been really enjoyable, and I've been really fascinated with hearing about your background, Jeanette, and I really particularly love how you just bridged all your experiences over the years to lean on each other and get you where you are today, which is very inspirational. So yeah, we are here with Jeanette Yew and having a really great conversation. And we will, as Chad said, soon open up the room to anybody who wants to come on and just chat with us or ask any questions to Jeanette and Chad. Just know that we are recording the conversation for later, as we've mentioned. So if you do raise your hand, you are acknowledging consent to be recorded. And so I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Chad. Take us through the rest.
Thanks. And folks, if you do have a question, just raise your hand down at the bottom of the screen. Nikki will pull you up onto the stage, and then we'll call on you when you're ready to ask your question. Jeanette, I wanted to go back to K-pop a little bit. I mentioned it in your bio, and I wanted to know, tell me a little bit about that design. What made that such an award-winning design?
Because I'm awesome. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's a perfectly acceptable reason. Moving on to the next question.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think what was really great about it is that I think, there you go, the New York Harbor, is that it was a really great collaboration. The production designer, Gabe Evanson, is also a member of Woodshed Collective. We just work really, really closely together because so it's an immersive experience. There are 4 major locations, including one that start off to be more like a press conference kind of feeling, 5 to eventually become the concert venue. And then within some of these major location, there's also further sub-location. So basically, I was designing 4 major environments that can be both satisfying as a I would say natural place that people can have conversation, like a book scene. But then also when it goes to the musical number, it really the room have to transform. And then also a lot of about another 20 sub environment and plus the lobby. So the thing that I think makes it really cohesive and really great was the fact that the collaboration was really strong. From day one, Gabe and I really have great fluid conversation, and we flow back and forth really well. Sometimes like he will be inspired by my research, there was certain things that is very James Shirley that we all both love. And so yeah, I think that's what ultimately makes it really great. And obviously like the music is phenomenal and the performances are phenomenal. But I think design-wise, it was just like having a really, really synchronized relationship from beginning to the end.
Yeah, I'm always talking about how this is a collaborative industry, and Rosco can't do anything without the work that designers do, or the work that our dealers do, or the rental shops. Rosco is reliant on others. Designers are reliant on others. Directors, to really achieve their vision, need to collaborate with these designers. How do you, I'll spin it to you and not make you speak for the rest of the world, but how do you teach collaboration? Is it something you either have or don't, or is it something that can be taught?
No, I actually think that it can totally be taught. I was actually recently, I'm going to be really, this is a new piece of information that I don't know anything about, but I recently being told by someone that there was actually 4 collaborative model, apparently, that when things go wrong, you can usually identify within those 4 models where they are, which is something I don't know, which I'm going to pursue this coming summer, actually. In terms of my own teaching, a couple of things that I really stress them, and that definitely coming from my background, is that I think that collaboration is teachable. I think that to a certain extent, collaboration obviously also depending on one's personality, one's communication style, one's way of dealing with conflicts and resolution, right? Those are sort of things that you carry with you that is yours, which is something that, yes, that's right, that aspect of it cannot be teach. It's just going to be who you are. However, what is teachable about it is for you to understand how you approach those things yourself, and having a reflection process for yourself. And also, another thing that so we spend a bit of time sort of asking students, sort of figuring out, why do you choose to react in this particular way in a certain situation? And having a way to step outside of it and really think about it and process it. And we look at conflict resolution model, and there are 5 different models, which is neither one of them is a good or bad, it's all situational. So even understanding that, and also another thing I teach in collaboration is that I think that Ruben Polando, who is artistic director of theater, Me Too, and is also our chair, said it really well, is that collaboration does not mean that you say yes all the time. Collaboration is actually, in the artistic world, is actually a collision. Recognizing recognizing that, and which also related to an essay that Anne Bogart wrote in the director prepares, which she called decision making as a violent act, because you make a decision and that's a choice that you go with and you move forward. So understanding these things, that is not personal, that it is actually structural, that is important to actually advance the artistic process, that is necessary, is important. And then work on your personal aspect of how you react to things, and how you noticing certain things that maybe you always makes you angry, right? And then being clear about those things with both yourself and perhaps with your collaborator. And then the last thing I do teach in collaboration is I stress a lot of know your constituent. Who are all the people involved in any given moment that you need to consider? And because it's not the same all the time, but if you know your constituents, you can identify better how to communicate and how to work with it particularly when there is a problem, because collaboration is frustrating when there is a problem, right? I mean, otherwise, if there's no problem, things are great. Like, everybody loves everybody and everybody have beers afterwards, and it's like the world is, the product is great and the world is a beautiful place. But really, it's in those conflict moment or difficulties moment or problems moments, how do you then be a collaborator? Like, those are the moments that your collaborative skill and your collaborative practice need to be in full force, in the most engaging and positive way to move something forward. So I would say that those are the things that I attempt to teach in my collaboration class.
I love that. I think that you broke that down and then rebuilt it together like a true cost analysis accountant. So I really appreciate that. It was so clear, and I love that we just sort of happened upon that question and got such a beautiful answer. I'm going to go back and re-listen to the recording and take notes on that, because collaboration is not limited to the design world. We at Rosco are involved in collaboration, and it's there were some pearls of wisdom there. So I thank you for that. I see that my friend Jay Duckworth has joined us here on the stage. I want to welcome him to the stage. And Jay, I think you have a question for us.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine, thank you.
That's so rookie. I'm so sorry. I gotta say, your journey is absolutely amazing. That's so crazy. And I also got into theater when I was very young. I teach creative collaborative at Pace University. Do you have any texts that you recommend that I read to help my students?
I actually use a lot of different texts. I use Anne Bogart's. I actually have them read A Director's Prepare, or the 6 essay that is there. I do have them read Robert Cohen's book. I don't remember the whole title of it. It's it's on collaboration. I then also have them read. I had them read emerging strategy on facilitation. I just have a collection of different texts. I also have them read a book and as a pretty dense chapter on elevator repair service that is all about how they use failure in their work, in building their work. But I will be happy if you send me an email. You can find me at NYU, or you can email me through my website. Also, I will be happy to share with you what text that I use, and I will also be love to know what you do, because I think it is a collective effort to shape teaching collaboration.
Oh, I teach props in the design department.
Oh, you teach props, great.
Well, thank you very much. I will check those out. Okay.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, Jay, for coming to the stage. And if you enjoyed a little bit of Jay's question, I do recommend that you tune in 2 weeks hence, 2 weeks from today at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to have an entire conversation with Jay Duckworth. So I'm glad he's here today, and I can't wait to speak with him here in a couple of weeks. If you tap on either my or Jay's profile picture, you will see the announcement of that event that's forthcoming 2 weeks from now. And if you tap on the event, there should be a little bell-shaped icon. If you hit that bell, it will be sure to remind you of the event as it's forthcoming, so you don't have to remember when was it that Chad was talking about. So yeah, I can't wait to talk with you more about that, Jay. That's going to be great. And yeah, are there any other questions from the audience? This is a great time, a last chance to raise your hand before we wrap up. Any other questions from the folks listening? I'm going to take silence as a no. Nikki, do you see anything else?
No, there's not.
All right. Well, before I hand it back to Nikki to wrap us out, I'm going to give my undying thanks to Jeanette for the generosity of time, taking time away from her opening celebrations at Brookfield Place. Go check out A Dozen Dreams, and keep your eyes on Jeanette's website for more of her incredible multi-hyphenate, multidisciplinary designs. Jeanette, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you. I hope the noise wasn't too crazy.
Not at all. We like the added flavor of New York being alive in the background. So that's always good.
And yes,
Nikki,
there
I'm
was
going to
a
hand
light
it back
at
to
the
you to close this out.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead,
Thank
Jeanette.
you. No, I was going to say that there's a light at the end of this tunnel. We'll all be gathering soon.
Oh, hear, hear. From your mouth to God's ears, I can't wait. We appreciate all that you're doing to bring arts back to us. Nikki, I'll hand it back to you to close us out. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Jeanette. And thank you, everybody, for joining us either here live or later in the recording. As Chad mentioned, we do have another one of these great chats set up for May 27th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Jay Duckworth, who is a guest questionnaire today. He is the proptologist, from what I understand. Is that right, Jay? The proptologist.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. So we're really looking forward to that conversation. You can find that listed under the Entertainment Design Club here, which we highly encourage everybody to join if you haven't already, and get to know other people in the live entertainment design family here. And if you found this interesting and want to listen to any of our previous conversations that we've had, we do have rosco.com/live now up, and where you can find this recording as well as the previous ones. So we highly recommend that you go over there and check those really great conversations out. And thanks everyone for joining. We will see you in a few weeks.
Thank you.